All right, we are here. Jenny Wemert, my good friend
Hello, my
Jenny
friend.
Wemert. Yes, nice to see you. Happy Monday. Wow, it's April 2025. Time
I know.
flies.
I know. I started saying second quarter today. I was like, what in the heck? How did we get here?
Yeah, and I know you're extremely busy, Jenny. One of the top team leaders, agents, brokers in the nation. I know you're based out of Florida, Orlando, Florida. We've had such a great relationship over the years. Multiple, in-depth conversations about business. We had a mastermind a few years ago that we would be meeting every week, going into like just some of the strategies. And I've always found you to be one of the most innovative, smartest, hardest working agents, brokers out there. So I just really appreciate you being on and sharing today some of your best strategies when it comes to generating listings. So for those that don't know you, which probably not too many people out there that don't know you, but for those
Oh,
that don't, why don't you why don't you just give us a little background, who you are, time in the business, what your business structure looks like, and then we'll jump into everything.
sure. Well, thanks, Kevin. I appreciate all those kind words that you just shared, and I'll take that as payment for today. So
Fair enough.
I'm just kidding. I've enjoyed our relationship over the years, and it's fun to be in the rooms with you and the others because that really matters in our growth, and it challenges us to expand our mindset sometimes because we get stuck. But I'm Jenny Wemert. I run a team Ridge in Orlando, Florida. So we operate as an independent boutique brokerage, but operate in a team model, always have. I came up in the Keller Williams world. I was there for 14 years before we came over and started our own brokerage. And that's been, I think we're going on 8 years now for our own brokerage. So we operate as a team. The thing I think we're most proud of is our retention of our agents, which sometimes is a blessing and a curse when you're trying to grow and scale. But our team has truly been built around the talent that we've had and continue to have. And so that in itself is, I think, unique. I've never had the pleasure of like rebuilding something. It's always been built around what we have and the promises we've made. So that's kind of interesting. We are like, I think we produced like 400 million last year, somewhere around 750 transactions. We're shooting for 1,000 this year. We are a lead-based team. We do buy leads, or we do VIP with Realtor.com, and we're transitioning to Flex with Zillow, and many other lead sources. But that's only 50% of our. That's not even. It's like 30% of our business are the lead side of things. We're 50% repeat referral.
Awesome. Awesome. And so today we're going to be talking about the best ways to generate listings. And I know you're big on listings. I know you work a lot of the buyer side too, but in order to survive in this market with all the recent changes and just overall over time in real estate, if you want to be successful long term, you need to focus on listings. So what would you say are some of your most effective, more traditional methods to generate listings?
Well, I think we don't want to avoid, miss out on the smallest of opportunities in the old basics, right?
Sure.
So, every time you're sitting in an open house, you are now a billboard and it's a tryout for all the neighbors to come and visit. So, it seems basic since we're always talking about all these AI tech, buy leads. Sitting in open houses in the neighborhood, inviting the neighbors to your open house is a good old fashioned way of getting listings, right? And then on backing that up with, if you were to do that right for your first listing in that neighborhood, if you are getting the mailings out and you're door knocking, you have a start to a farm. And so continuing that on with a farm, and layering in marketing is a good long-term play to, one, have a niche, but two, have a constant source of listings coming to you. So, good old fashioned farming, it still works. And I just got done with having a meeting with some of our agents about, how to connect with the neighbors and why you would want to do that. And it's for a lot of reasons. It's to get the listings, but it's also to stack their databases on yours because they have friends and family that need help. So good old fashioned farming. I'm a huge believer. My business was built on it. We did so many egg hunts. I thought I was at Carney at one point. Seriously. If you look into your database, like, a lot of us have bought leads for many years. I think we have, I don't know, 200, 300,000 people in our database, right? If somebody is inquiring on a property, that's probably like here in Orlando anyway, above our average list price, like 500, 600, $700,000, typically, and they already live in Orlando, they are typically have a home to sell. And so listings are hidden on the backside of those buyer leads. So every time we get a lead, we are using Forewarn, which is provided by Florida Realtors. We look to see if they own a home, where they live, what is their age, and then we treat that lead differently because now it's a potential buy sell. And so using that system, we use a system called HomeBot. There's Fellow, there's all kinds of them out there that as soon as we know they own a home, we put them on a digital a statement on what their home is worth. And so that's a way to stay in front of them to generate listings and callbacks. Just all kinds of things. Past clients, staying in touch with your past clients, obviously our future listings and buys, and they know people, again, stacking those databases. And we're coming out of our strong sellers market here, but in our strong sellers market, we were going to our past clients to ask if they could ask their neighbors in their Facebook groups if anybody was selling. So we just have to change up that script now in a buyer's market, but we can't access those local Facebook groups, but our past clients can, or somebody that's living in the community can. And it's not advertising if they do it, it's advertising if we do it. So there's a lot of opportunity just sitting out there in social media in those Facebook groups if you can get to be part of them. So that's a few things that we do besides outbound calling and expires
Well, it sounds
physical, the obvious.
yeah, and I want to get into some of that too. But it sounds like, getting into farming and building a database, right? And then tapping into that database, utilizing those platforms that you mentioned, having something there, some sort of automation, something that you can leverage for your time, basically, right?
Yeah.
And then it's relationships. Sounds like it's relationships. And I think you were pretty big. You mentioned the egg hunts and stuff. Like you've always been pretty active in the community, right? Like you've done some of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And so talk a little bit about that, like just some of the community things that you've done. I'm pretty sure you've done some of those, or you're heavy
Sure.
on them.
When I first started this business, I was a mom, had twins in a stroller, and I thought, well, I'm just going to work my neighborhood and build a business. But over time, like once the kids go to school, I'll be able to take the lid off. It just happened way faster than that. But I would go in the community. And I decided like I wanted to build the community to be a place that I wanted to live and raise my children. And so instead of just having an egg hunt for my kids or whatever, I just always did it for the whole community. And so we would do like egg hunts, I would do community garage sales, I would do fundraisers in the community, I would do bunko groups for the moms, and anything that I wanted to do, I just like scaled it to include the community, right? And so at one point, this is way back in the day, 2003 probably, I had 80% of my market share in my community because I had layered in so many different types of marketing, but also the relationships, and people started really rooting for me, and why wouldn't they list with me? The funny thing though, I got into realtor.com and Zillow playing defense because, back in the day, you could put all these sellers had were the mailers or whatever you could put in their hands. But then they started to go Google, and I needed to make sure that when they got to Google and they got to realtor.com and Zillow, I was also there like as defense. And then playing defense, it turned into offense because I ended up with too many leads and then I had to hire people and now we're 80 people strong. That's sort of like, how we got where we are. But back to the farming, I realized that was a, a great way to build a community, but also a business. So I basically packaged that up and found another community similar of 400 homes and then rinse and repeated. And I got to about 30, $40 million just doing 2 communities of 800 homes on purpose. And then, the realtor.com thing came on and we took the lid off. But just now at this point, I'm not in the community throwing the egg hunts anymore, but it's still a scalable thing we can do for our agents. So they can go into their own communities and it becomes scalable.
Yeah. And what's
But
cool
now
about
we're doing like email newsletters with retargeting, and it's fancier than my old black and white paper that I shove in their door, but
right, right, right. Well, it's easier to have those events now, right? Because you can
yeah.
email and do all those things. But what's really great about having the community events is you become the anchor. Like you bring
Mhm.
everyone together and you're the anchor,
Yeah.
you're the host, kind of like, all eyes on you kind of thing, right? And you're there and providing that value to the neighborhood. And I think that's great and great way to kind of start building for those that are, that have a database or that are starting to farm into a specific area.
Yeah.
Really great methods there. What about like you touched a little bit about FISBOs and some other ways to focus on generating listings.
Yeah. I'm not going to say that I'm the best at teaching outbound prospecting. I've never been a great prospector. I'm more of a marketing mindset. I always wanted people to call us instead of calling out. However, I do have an agent or two that are really good at the FISBOs and now we're having some expired canceled again. So that game is coming back. But FISBOs never turned off. And, it's low hanging fruit if you have a good value proposition to, offer them. So that's a no brainer for people who are really comfortable on the phones that have their value proposition in place and can work those leads. That's the low hanging fruit in my opinion.
Yeah, and I remember this saying. There's a couple of sayings that I remember. One was when I was really young as a kid. I had this coach, and he'd always say, the difference between an amateur and a professional is consistency, right?
Yes.
And that's really what it's all about is consistency. And with those mailers and those farms and even the community events, the first one or two attempts, I mean, it may not be like huge results, but if you can maintain the consistency, that's really what it's all about. And
Yeah.
the other thing I remember, I was at an event once, maybe it was, I don't know which event it was, but somebody was on stage and they said, there's 3 types of agents out there. There's a networker, person that goes out, does the events out there face to face. There's the prospector that's on the phones grinding, the FISBOs, the expires and whatever. And then there's a silver spooner, which like has all the connections, parents went to the right schools, know the right people. So I think what you do is a little bit of everything, because you
Yeah.
do generate those leads and you have your team that's on the phones and there's a lot of different ways to skin a cat, and it's just where you kind of fit into that cat in those one of those categories, or maybe you're good at all of them, or maybe you're
I
just a
didn't have the silver spoon, but my agents have the silver spoon now. But I didn't have the silver spoon for sure.
um
No,
so
I
yeah,
definitely consistency, time on task over time for sure.
absolutely. So some newer strategies now, some of the like a little bit more on the shortcut side, when it comes to, for example, like appointments, seller appointments.
Mhm.
um
Yep.
Thoughts generally on that, like what are your thoughts on if there was a platform out there, if there was, just saying, there may be, there may not be.
Is there? I don't know. Is there?
If there was a platform out there that could generate, and there is, seller appointments for you, just in general thoughts on that in terms of like shortcutting, getting to the end result faster. Yes, you pay for it, but you get to the finish line faster. Just in general thoughts on that, leverage, time,
Sure.
so on.
Yeah. Well, again, like I already disclosed that I was never a prospector. And so I don't even want to spend the time to be good at that. And if you really were to look at your dollar per hour and what you're worth, and if I could have somebody else make those calls for me and produce a lead, and I only have to pay what probably less than what my dollar per hour would be if I were to charge per hour. Isn't that a no-brainer? Like you're going to pay for a lead one way or another, whether it's time, marketing, or you're literally paying for a lead. I absolutely would pay for a lead if it is a good lead that is going to produce something. It doesn't have to be right out of the gate. Like the leads that we're working with together, they may not be today leads, but they are real people with real plans to sell, and now it's our job just to nurture and stay in touch. And, like I would pay for that all day long because I
Yeah.
don't have the time to sit for hours dialing. My time could be used better somewhere else and get that hour back and just pay for that lead.
Yeah. Let me back up because obviously we're talking about Seller Appointment Hub with that and booking appointments, but really that's kind of like a built for you model to be able to generate appointments. But there's also a way to do it yourself too, right? And we didn't really touch on it. So like
Yeah.
in terms of hiring a VA or hiring somebody to do the calls, I know you're big on that. So talk about that, backing up a little bit and how that's impacted your business and what you've done there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if your agents aren't comfortable calling, you're not comfortable calling, you can, you can hire an ISA and have to cover that salary or cover whatever their fees are and have them make the calls. Or you can tap into a program that does that at scale, that has that trained, that you don't have to figure out what to tell the ISAs to say. They're already trained, they're doing it at a high level, and they have a system. They're figuring out who to call for you, and you're not spending the time to go pull down lists and work through all the data to have your ISAs call. Like it's just a no-brainer to have somebody that's already in place doing it at a higher level than I could ever train it to be done.
Yeah.
I don't even attempt it. We don't have outbound callers.
Oh, you don't? I thought,
No,
oh, okay. Yeah. So you
no,
kind of
because
do the, so
yeah,
you're just taking in the appointments then that being
yeah,
booked for you. Oh, cool.
right.
So let me ask you this in terms of like paid, really kind of any paid lead gen appointment setting. What do you think in terms of like where do you need to be as an agent? Like in what part of your business does it make sense to start paying for advertising, paying for appointments, whatever it is that you're looking to do in terms of marketing, would you say?
That's a tough question to answer
Like,
because it probably depends on their financial situation, right? Like, because you could catapult your business by paying for leads out of the gates. But a lot of people come into the industry and they don't have the reserves like that, and they have to do it themselves. And, their time is not worth as much as what they would pay for a lead at that point, but their expertise is going to be lacking. So, um, it just probably depends on their ability to be able to buy a lead or not, to answer that question effectively. But if thus say they don't have the money, they would, learn the prospecting, do the prospecting, but eventually their time does become money and they have to make sure they're using their time wisely in their 20%. And so does that agent want to be a prospector forever? Or can they leverage off the prospecting piece, manage the marketing piece, and go be the best realtor out there and find some balance? Like I've never wanted that. I never wanted to have to hunt every day for my food. Like I just wasn't how I wanted my business to be built. I wanted to be able to build something that I knew that would pay off 2 to 3 years if we do it right, where, our past clients will become clients again and they'll, the referral based business and people start calling us. We use like what I started with earlier, just even in the farming, we use systems like the Seller AI or, Homelight, some other seller marketing pieces, to fill the pipeline, to backfill. And so we need the seller leads because everything is built on the seller leads, but I don't want to build a prospecting department and pay for the VAs and have that overhead and have to train them because then now you have a trainer, now you have a VA, now you have to have somebody to keep in touch to hold that VA accountable. Now you got 3 people trying to generate one lead. It's way more expensive than just paying for the lead from a company
yeah,
that's going to figure it out.
I think it kind of look at it like as an individual agent, and I think you have to just kind of earn your stripes, my opinion. Work your way, understand the business. And that to me is like the difference between like an employee almost and then being a business owner, right? An employee is working in the business every single day, doing the work, and there's nothing wrong with that, and that's great. And some people even get to a point where they're at the high level and they want to continue working in their business because they enjoy it, they love it. For me, and I think for you, and maybe some people that are on this call, like I want to build a business. I want to build something that is going to be scalable, that I can, like you said, you get up in the morning and there's deals coming in and you're not really doing a lot of like actual effort making calls and stuff like that. So definitely I think starting out, if you don't have, let's say you don't have the finances right now, you have the time. So you put in the time to build the finances so that you can put in the finances and then get your time back, which kind of sounds
Right.
like where you're at. And I really think that is a really, for me, it's been a good progression in my business, and I think for a lot of agents that's kind of the goal. But again, just depends on what your situation looks like and where you kind of want to go. But speaking of going back to the seller appointments, what would you say is kind of like the biggest advantage for somebody that is looking to take advantage of the seller these appointments? They're having homeowners ready to meet, ready to talk about listing their home. What would you say is kind of the big? I mean, it's kind of a no, pretty obvious. I think the
Yeah,
answer.
well, it's if you're going to pay for leads and you're trying to figure out where's your money best spent, if you can, the holy grail are seller leads. Like there's so few programs out there that you can even just tap into and buy seller leads, first of all. Um, but they're the holy grail because you buy that one lead, well, they're likely buying again. So it's a twofer, first of all. And then you get a sign in the yard, you have a billboard. And then you have the opportunity, like we already discussed, on open houses to meet the neighbors and build something off of that, build a farm off of that if you wanted to. And then, so it's, the Gary Keller 3 Ls, listing, leads, and leverage. It's the heart of this business. It's how you build the foundation of your real estate business. And so we've all, especially the top teams out there, we've all been chasing seller leads like the holy grail. And so, paying for a seller lead, you're more than likely getting a 2-for-1 than, just a seller lead.
Let me ask you this. This is a question that always comes up. Let's say you have a seller and they're unrealistic about the price, and we can talk about also like that process too, like when you first meet with someone, what's their mindset, and then finally when they get to a listing. But you have a seller, they're unrealistic about the price. There's the famous saying, a sign in the yard is better than a sign in the trunk, right?
Yeah.
But what are your thoughts on that? Do you take listings sometimes if they are overpriced, or is it like, "Look, it's not worth my time, I'm not going to do it"? What's your kind of philosophy on that, just in general? Because I know a lot of people have very strong opinions on this.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
curious to know what your thoughts are.
Well, I think it's interesting answering that question at the moment because we're transitioning to a buyer's market again. So things are changing a bit. Like in a seller's market, I would take overpriced listings all day long. The market's going to fix itself. As long
Mhm.
as the sellers are motivated, we would take the listings. The buyer side of things, it kind of depends because, and not the buyer side, in a buyer's market, because like, I analyzed a few properties last night with an agent, and you could be you're looking at a resale they just purchased 2 years ago. We're seeing so many homeowners that are upside down in their taxes and insurance right now because they didn't plan properly for tax planning,
Mhm.
especially if it was a new home. So you have a brand new home, they're 2 years in, they can't afford it, they need out. The market has shifted. The builders are still in there giving away the farm, and you're in a solid buyer's market with so many to choose from. And the only way out of that is to price below the market and get behind that snowball. And if they don't have the money to bring to the table, then it's a losing battle. You got to figure out how to tell them how to rent the property, get roommates, short
Mhm.
sale or foreclose. I mean, like we're not going to sell it at the top of the market right now, and the market's not going to fix it. So I think it's important to be an expert of the market and to be able to read the market and make good business decisions, because we're making good business decisions. And making sure we're telling the truth to the sellers and setting them up for success. I mean, they're counting on what you're telling them, but we're seeing that scenario a lot right now,
which
unfortunately.
is the overpriced situation. They're not able
But
to.
people just bought 2 years ago, and here in like, it's Texas, I'm in Florida. Here in Florida, we have a homestead law, and the taxes reset like the year after they buy the property, and they're resetting significantly. So they're behind in their escrows by, let's say, $400 a month, and then they have to put $400 additional on for the next year so they're not behind. Their payments are, swinging $800 to $1,000 that they just weren't prepared for.
Gotcha.
And if they're in newer communities, they're toast because we're competing with builders with inventory now.
Gotcha. What
We're
about,
seeing it.
yeah, that's tough. That's a tough situation. So you're saying in that situation, you probably wouldn't take the listing then?
I wouldn't, if there was no plan B for them, if they weren't gonna consider a short sale, or if they don't have the cash to, like, if there's no way out for them, then no, it would
Gotcha.
be a futile point.
Okay. And then what about like handling objections? Because a lot of times, like, not all the time, but even with Seller Appointment Hub, we'll book an appointment for somebody, and then they tell us, yes, I want to sell, and yes, I want to talk to an agent. They get there, and then it's like they're a little unrealistic on
Yeah.
pricing, or they might say, well, I thought about it, not really thinking about doing it now. I want to wait a little bit. What are just some of the things? Because of course, every agent would love for an appointment to be set for them, and then like the homeowner's there. They made a cup of coffee for the agent. They actually printed a listing agreement. Like they're ready to sign right then and there. But a lot of times that's not the case, and I just wonder what are some of the things that you do in terms of handling those objections, like initially, just with pricing or timing or whatever the case may be. Are there any specific strategies or tips that you can share to just kind of get people in line in terms of setting those right expectations?
Sure. I think, it comes down to being a problem solver, right? So if you're an expert in the market and you're paying attention to the tools and resources around you, and you're studying the market conditions and the trends, when we go in to meet with sellers, we are trying to figure out what are their goals, and can we accomplish them, and can we do what they need us to do. And so it's really a problem solving mission. So if somebody's like, I would sell if, okay, well, what is that if, and what would it take, and what resources would it take to be able to accomplish that, and start building that plan. Or we're not ready yet, we would only do this if we could, you know buy our next house first. Or, okay, well, let's look at bridge loans. Do you have to sell before you buy? Let's start talking to the lender. Like, you have to build out the next steps. What are the steps? What are the hurdles that we have to clear to be able to clear the way for them to be comfortable listing, right? Because in some situations we go on these appointments and they're caught by surprise. They're like, I didn't know I wanted to sell until I got this call or whatever. And so we would if, well, then, like, it's putting those steps in place. It's also creating that urgency. So they're like, I don't know, is this a good time to sell? We'd have to get the house ready. Do you have a plan to help them move that fast, get through that process faster? Are they lacking the money to be able to update their property? Have that solution. Um, are they hoarders and they're never going to get to the bottom of the pile? Do we need to bring an investor for you that will just allow you to take what you want and leave it all here? And we'll bring in our investors. So it's really comes down to problem solving and putting the next steps together to clear those hurdles. There's so many different scenarios that you could think of to go through that. But if you're just walking in to get the listing and you're not presenting any solutions, then people who are not ready are not going to sign.
So having the resources and preparing for those resources. Let's maybe
Yeah.
just kind of go down to maybe a few of those. So you mentioned like if they need money to repair,
Mhm.
what are some things that you do there? I mean, do you have like there are some programs out there right now that you can
Yeah.
present a situation like that, and they'll come and do the repairs and stuff. Just maybe touch on some of those because those are really
Yeah.
valuable. Yeah.
And if they're highly motivated, like, even as a brokerage, sometimes we'll do that as a loan towards our commission, and then in the end, we'll get it back. Sometimes we'll just do a loan for them, but everything would have to be in alignment. They'd have to be highly motivated, willing to price well, and the market's got to be in alignment to be able to take the risk on the loan. But there's like the Curbios out there and other programs that will do it. Sometimes you can get some of our vendors will do the work and get paid at closing, because of our relationships with them and how much work or business we give them. Sometimes it's just like, you know, they we're gonna take such a hit on this house because we're not gonna be able to get insurance because your roof is 30 years old or whatever. So, bringing the roofer out, helping them get through a claim process. Can we get this covered on insurance? Because instead of having to come off your price for 20 grand for a new roof, we could get you a new roof for a $2,000 deductible. Doesn't that make sense? Because buyers want that dollar for dollar cost for a roof for AC so trying to problem solve from that perspective. Sometimes they can finance in the AC and then pay it off at closing. There's same with carpet, flooring, you can finance and pay it off at closing. There's all kinds of solutions, pulling a HELOC out to do the work, all kinds. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
I think it's just, trying having an answer for their objection and helping them take the steps forward is everything.
yeah. And the topic of this conversation is how to generate listings, right? So initially you might think, well, how do I generate listings, farming, FISBOs, this, that, all the stuff we talked about. But these little things are how to generate listings
Yeah,
because a lot of agents don't have these
conversion.
conversion, right? And a lot of agents don't have these resources, right? And so if we can bring these to the table and be ready in advance, it's really going to help move the needle and help us generate and convert more opportunities in the listing. So really important to have those things in place, including working with investors. I can't tell you how many agents like we work with at Seller Appointment Hub that don't take cash offer appointments. They don't want them. And the reason is because, quite frankly, they don't have the relationships with investors that will come in and buy that home for cash. And there's so many institutional investors out there. Like you don't even need a
No-brainer.
relationship. You don't even need a
No,
relationship. So maybe mention some of those like companies and platforms that
sure.
I know you've got
Yeah.
many of those that people can
Yeah.
take advantage of when you have someone that just wants a cash offer.
Yeah. Well, the obvious are Open Door and OfferPad. I don't know if they're everywhere, but they are in Orlando. We actually have our agents request offers. If they have the time, they request offers ahead of time before their listing appointments because
Yep.
they can, even if it's not a cash offer lead, it's still the elephant in the middle of the room. And you can answer the question at the listing appointment to say, here's our worst case scenario. Here's what institutional investors would offer you. This would be like, the ripcord. If you don't want any showings or you don't want to be bothered, you want the sure thing, then here's what this looks like. Here's what the market looks like. And here's how long it would take and what you'd have to endure to get that. So those are the easy ones. You can put those right into the system. They'll give you ballparks and then you have to work the process. But Open Door and OfferPad, easy. But every one of us, if we have listings, we're getting offers from wholesalers, we're getting offers from investors every day. Keep all that information, build a database, put them into Follow Boss, for example, and then every time you get like an offer that needs a cash offer, or if we have a listing that, an opportunity, put it in there, see if you can have any bites and buyers. You got to make sure you're protected on a commission agreement before you do that. But you could launch it out to every investor and
Yeah.
see if you could get anybody to bite on it. You can build an investor database just based on the offers you receive from investors.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I remember like first getting started in the business, 2002, not too long ago, actually a really long time ago. And I remember going to listing presentations and very unprepared, like I just bring a tax record like sheet of paper and here's your house, like here's the property. But now it's really, I mean, coming in fully prepared, having all those resources ready for during that presentation, understanding the homeowner's expectations and kind of their situation. Like, for example, if I know there's some areas, just as an example, that have like military, high
Yep.
military. So when they move like cross country, and they might need a rental when they move. They might need a car rental or movers or whatever. Just imagine having that on a listing presentation. Just preparing in advance all the possible questions or situations that may arise, and then having the answers that you can show. Like, hey,
Yeah.
I've got this. I've got these relationships. I've got this here. I think that's really, really important in helping convert that into a listing.
Well, and it's also like, for example, this is just top of mind because I did it last night. But we have a community here called Winter Garden, and it's like a little sleeper community, and it's got a golf cart district where you can go drive your golf cart. And we have a house that's going to be listed there. In doing the research, I'm always thinking, we're investors too, right? So I'm always thinking, what's the highest use for this property? What is the best way to capitalize on this property? So it was in R2 zoning, so it could have two property or two, like it could have a duplex or another property or an ADU on it. It only had one currently. And it's not in an HOA. It could be Airbnb. As a matter of fact, they are using it sometimes as an Airbnb. So should we be looking at just a regular buyer coming in to buy this property, or should we be really trying to attract the investor who could use a DSCR loan that only 10% down, get in there, use this as an Airbnb, add an additional dwelling unit, collect two rents off of one lot in a
Right.
desirable golf cart, community that is really up and coming. So what's the best way to market that property? And then you pitch that to the sellers. They actually, sometimes,
They don't even
sometimes
know.
you may have to show them how to keep it and then sell them another house. But
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, we show them, well, we could probably get you that number if we take this approach.
Yeah, a lot of times they don't know what the possibilities are, and we bring
Right,
that to the table. Yeah, no,
right.
absolutely. What about like strategy as you go into a listing or you go into a presentation? Are you bringing the listing agreement with you? Do you have a specific approach that you take when you're meeting homeowners, or like that you teach to your agents? Just in general on
Yeah.
that, any thoughts?
Yep, yep. We have folders that we provide, and we have magazines that are seller presentation that are grab and go for our agents. We encourage them to print down the contract because that's an opportunity for the close, right? So, they can use the terms of the contract to make sure that everybody's on the same page and go for the close. Um, we can leave it off the market for a certain period of time while we're getting our marketing ready and put it into our coming soon program, so that our agents can see what we have coming soon, which is a great hook internally, for our brokerage. And then, but our agents we have access to House Canary. It's a little bit of a hack, but it's essentially is just an AVM. And so we tell our agents, you got to look at the AVMs because your clients are. So they've looked at Zillow, they may see, Redfins or CoreLogic or something out there. You need to know what you're walking into and then have your data. And then, we use different CRMs. I don't dictate whoever uses for CRMs, it's whatever they're comfortable with, but either Cloud CMA or one through MLS or RPR. And, we give them the scripts and we give them the tools, but they practice their presentation and but what we really teach is preparing for that listing appointment, like doing that research. Do you know if that house is in that golf cart section or not? Is it two streets over? Is it Airbnb? What objections are you going to have to overcome, and how can you overcome those? Is it only with price? Like, the more they're prepared, then the more confident they're going to be in front of the sellers, and they have to pitch less because then they're just in a problem solving, conversation. Like,
Yeah.
what are your goals and can we meet them?
Just doing
It
that
becomes
work
way easier.
doing
Yeah.
the work in advance. It just reminds me of and I'm not like political at all, but like the person that the public, what is it? The person that's on the panel every day answering questions for whoever the president might be, right? There's like been a couple of ladies the last 2 terms, but they're always prepared for the questions that the media is going to ask. Like they
Yeah.
already had the questions pre.
Anticipating the objections or the,
Right.
yeah.
So it's like, oh, funny you asked me that question because I've already got the answer here. So, I mean, it's kind of like just being ready in advance, understanding the property, the neighborhood, what you're walking into, and being ready for those objections. And I'm also a big fan of like you said, pre-marketing, um, I guess, presentation, like sending a pre-listing package. Like one of the
Mhm.
things that we talk about all the time at Seller Appointment Hub when we're booking appointments is like before you go to that meeting, send over a pre-listing package, send over
Yep.
some information about yourself, like reviews or anything that you've done,
Yep.
like the community events you've done, whatever it
Hmm.
is you can show that you are a credible professional agent that's going to be able to solve their problems. Super important.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're like nodding your head. So would you agree that
Yeah, we
that?
had that, we have all that built in our follow-up us. We have templates that they tweak. But it's all, before you show up, you are already demonstrating professionalism by sending out your pre-email, right, with all the things you just mentioned, a link to a digital magazine. That's the magazine I'm going to bring in person, our stats, all of that. Putting them onto a calendar appointment, verifying the appointment, sending a reminder, showing up on time, all of that matters because that is just being a professional. That is setting them up when you get to the door. If you go, yeah, I'll be there too, you haven't asked them any questions about the property. They haven't had a chance to tell you about their crown molding in their purple bathroom or whatever. And you show up with some, 1-page grid printed down off the MLS and a tax record. And then you're pitching them on you and you haven't asked them anything about what they want. They'd be crazy to hire you, right? Like you're late. You showed up 15 minutes late and you're wearing, the flip-flops. Like, stop it. Like, I can't stand it. So
Right.
yeah, no, it's from beginning to end. Like, I always tell our agents, you really shouldn't have to ask them too many more questions at the table if you've done a pre-interview before you got there, because how are you doing as CMA if you haven't asked them the questions? And
Yeah.
even if it feels futile to you because you can see it on tax records, they don't know that. And so by asking the questions, it demonstrates that you care enough to get this right. And you don't have to
Absolutely.
do it in 2 trips. You can do it in one. Because you can say like, hey, just shoot me a picture of your kitchen and your bathrooms, maybe what I can see out the back door. That will help me get this right. So we have we have a valuable conversation and face to face. But if they send you those videos in advance, you can send those to Open Door and OfferPad and get those offers.
Yep. And then, by the way, guys, for those that are on watching, thank you so much. We're going to be wrapping up here pretty soon. But if you've got questions, please just put them in the chat. Looks like Christy Whitehead asked what was the house. You said house canary. So
House Canary, that's we have a hack through our lender. It's a back office access to what lenders use to compare to appraisers. You can buy it too, it's just really expensive, but look up
yeah.
House Canary.
Going back to the appointments, just overall, like we talked about the benefits, saving time, having somebody that's ready to go right now, as opposed to going out and putting in. There's nothing wrong with putting in the work up front. This just kind of shortcuts the situation by generating an appointment for yourself. Like, what would you say to someone who's skeptical about paying for an appointment?
Um,
Like, if it's like, hey,
yes,
I'm,
yeah, I
I,
think they're crazy.
I don't want to pay for an appointment. Like,
Yeah, I mean,
uh,
like, if you can fix it in your commission. Like, I mean, if you're betting on yourself, basically. Like, if you feel like you can convert an appointment, why wouldn't you pay for an appointment? Like, if you're waiting for Zillow to give you an appointment or Realtor.com, like they're taking 40% off the top. Like, that is way more than paying, a couple $100 for an appointment. You're betting on yourself. And, even if they don't list, you have a person that you've met that are in your database, somebody to keep in touch with, that has a database of their own that you can stack. Like you're adding people to your database, whether they list or not. They will eventually list. Their neighbor will list. Like it's a game of it's a numbers game of getting in front of people. But I mean, it's a no-brainer in my opinion. You're betting on yourself.
To me, it's a shortcut, right? Because I'm going to pay
Yeah,
either in time or I'm going to pay
yeah,
in money. And my goal is to get that appointment. So if I have something that's going to be able to do that for me, and yeah, like you said, you pay a little bit up front and there's no referral fee or anything like that, it just makes a whole lot of sense.
yeah.
Somebody
I
asked,
mean, I don't know if we can go, if you, just the seller, the leads that we were talking about,
yeah,
they're real people with real
yeah,
needs. And like, they may not be like, we've listed and sold them. Some are ready, some are not. And it's the problem solving piece, is the, having a good follow-up program, having a nurture program. And eventually that they will all pay. They are they're real people. I would rather have that than some cheap Facebook leads that are clicking and entering on a form to look at pretty pictures that aren't even like at all verified. Like these are no-brainer leads. They really
so
are.
I know we weren't going to get super detailed, but you did mention you had some listings through Seller Appointment Hub.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. We've listed and closed. Well, we've listed and closed. We've only been doing it a couple months, so one doesn't sound like a lot, but one's a win, right? One paid for all of it. So yes, and we have quite a few in nurture. They're all real. Some of them chicken out before the appointment. We've had that because they weren't, they weren't quite at the stage of being able to make a decision. But for the most part, every one of them has been real person that we've talked to with a real need and varying levels of motivation. But to me, that's who we want to talk to. And it's a shortcut to be able to get to people and be in relationship with people.
And it's
But
all
for
about,
sure, it's a pipeline of sellers.
awesome. Yeah, it's all about ROI, return on
Yeah.
investment, right? So right now we're seeing about 20% conversion rate on those seller appointments. So, I
Yep.
mean, if you compare that to, let's say, like Zillow or some of the other platforms, you're paying a lot more and you get a much lower conversion rate. So it's just really about, to me, I'm big on shortcuts. If I can get to the finish line faster, like I'm gonna do what it takes to get there. Some
Absolutely.
questions here. What CRM do you use? From Eva. Thanks, Eva, for the question.
CRM, we use Follow Up Boss with some plugins. We use HomeBot to keep in touch with sellers. We use Rooster for searches, all embedded in Follow Up Boss. And then the seller appointment
Uh,
hub, yeah. And
awesome.
that's pay per appointment.
Pay per appointment. Yep. Um, cool. So I think
Not closing, I think is important. That's not a referral based. We're paying for the real conversation up front.
yeah, yeah. No, that's what it's all about. And yeah, I guess we can end it off with just the one thing you think is what every agent should focus on when it comes to seller lead generation or just generating more listings. It could be anything. It doesn't have to be
Yep.
seller
Well, I
appointment,
mean, just,
whatever.
talking through this topic, it's looking at everything that you're doing and maximizing it. You get that one seller lead, it could lead to so much more. But are you taking advantage of it at every turn? Are you maximizing the sign that's in the yard to generate the most sign calls possible? Are you getting those testimonials that are in Zillow and in Realtor.com or Google or Facebook where they are clearly talking about you as as an expert listing agent? Because sellers research agents, typically buyers they go to the house, which is the mousetrap. So are you maximizing every opportunity in the stage from getting the lead all the way to close and beyond, and really think through every single step of that, like the appointments and your presentation and your marketing and you know for a long time, every time we took a listing, we built a blog around the city, the zip code, and the community. And we did that for years to build all of our back SEO. And we did it organically, just using the listing as the trigger and added it to the checklist. So just like thinking through every single thing you can do using that billboard, that listing that you have to build more business from that. And that's why listings, leads, leverage, Gary Keller's 3 L's matter.
Yeah. And the long term, it's just all about long term. You've got the database, nurture it, stay in front of people, whatever it is, whether any kind of value that you can provide, community events, automated emails, whatever it is, you just want to be
Yep.
in front of those people, stay top of mind so that they know when the time comes, I've got this person in front of me that has
Yep.
been messaging me, and it's really easy and convenient. I can just click a button or pick up the phone and call, and super easy. So
Yeah.
yeah.
You get that listing. Are you circle prospecting the neighbors? Are you door knocking? Do you have door knock hangers? Like you've got the mousetrap now. So, maximize it.
And also just like finally, as we're wrapping up here, sellers is where it's at, guys. Like, right? I mean, we want to focus on sellers. Sellers is like the name of the game, and those sellers have a lot of times a home to buy, and it gives us the platform and the ability to expose ourselves as an agent in the neighborhood. It just, there's so many reasons with the NAR situation, whatever the case may be. I mean, there's just like more and more we want to focus on sellers, and I hope you guys found this to be valuable. I know I did. Jenny, you're always amazing. Thank you so much for your time. And before we wrap up, you guys, any other last questions? Shoot them in there now, because we're going to be wrapping up here. But Jenny, I'll let you take the final word. Just last closing thoughts. I guess just overall, what do you think we should, just your
Yeah, I
overall?
mean, just summarize what we did today is like, build a plan, stick to the plan, be consistent, and chase those listings because that's the foundation of your business. And last thought, listings give you time back too. You're not driving around all over town with buyers in your car, it's showing houses. You have way more opportunities to leverage and build and scale if you have listings than you do if you have buyers.
Awesome. And finally, you're in Orlando, so anybody's got referrals, deals, clients, shoot them over to Jenny and she'll take care of them for you guys. Awesome.
Absolutely.
Thank you guys so much. Thanks, Jenny. Thanks everybody for being on, and have a great week. Take care.
My pleasure.